You probably think your home is the safest place your cat could ever be. But what if the things you do every day are quietly working against them? Small choices, normal routines, even harmless habits can build up in ways that slowly affect their health without any obvious signs. What you're about to see goes deeper than you expect. 1. You leave the food bowl out all day, maybe even top it off whenever it looks a little empty. It feels like care, like you're making sure your cat never goes hungry. But what often goes unnoticed is how this constant access slowly changes their body and behavior. Cats aren't designed to graze endlessly. In the wild, they hunt, eat, then rest. When food is always there, their internal rhythm breaks. They eat out of boredom, out of habit, not hunger. Over time, this leads to weight gain, but more importantly, it quietly stresses organs like the kidneys and liver. What looks like comfort is actually removing a natural structure their body depends on. And the strange part is, many cats won't show obvious signs until the damage has already progressed. Adjusting feeding into smaller, timed portions doesn't just control weight. It restores a pattern their body recognizes as normal. 2. You clean the litter box, maybe once a day, maybe every other day, and to you it seems fine. It doesn't look that dirty. But your cat experiences that space very differently. The moment waste sits, chemical changes begin almost immediately, releasing ammonia that builds up in a confined area. Each visit becomes slightly more uncomfortable, even if your cat keeps using it. What many owners miss is what happens next. Cats start holding it longer, waiting for a better moment that never comes. That delay puts pressure on their urinary system, and over time it increases the risk of infections and crystal formation. It's not dramatic, it's slow, silent, and cumulative. And because cats are so good at hiding discomfort, you rarely see the connection between a slightly dirty box and a serious health issue developing weeks later. Increasing cleaning frequency isn't just about hygiene. It directly affects how safely your cat's body functions. 3. There's a moment you've probably seen dozens of times without thinking twice. Your cat walks across the floor, pauses, and starts grooming intensely, licking the same spot over and over again. It looks normal. Cats groom, that's what they do. But when it becomes repetitive or focused, it's often not about cleanliness anymore, it's regulation. Cats use grooming to calm their nervous system, especially when something in their environment feels off. That something can be subtle. Strong cleaning products, constant noise, even a slight change in routine. Over time, this kind of stress doesn't just stay behavioral. It begins to affect the immune system, digestion, even skin health. Some cats will literally groom themselves into irritation just to cope. And because the trigger isn't obvious, it gets dismissed as personality. But once you start noticing when and where it happens, you begin to see patterns. Moments where your cat is trying to stabilize itself in an environment that feels just a little too overwhelming. 4. Think about how often your cat chooses a specific spot to sleep. Not random places, but the same few areas. Near a window, on a certain chair, sometimes even the floor. It seems like preference, but temperature plays a much bigger role than most people realize. Cats naturally seek warmth because their bodies function optimally at higher temperatures than ours. The hidden issue is when the environment drops below what they're comfortable with for long periods. Cold surfaces, drafts, or even tiled floors can slowly force their body to work harder to maintain stability. This doesn't show up immediately. Instead, it accumulates. Joint stiffness, reduced activity, subtle changes in mood. Over time, especially in older cats, this constant low-level strain can accelerate physical decline. Providing warm, stable resting areas isn't about luxury. It's about reducing a background stress that quietly wears on their system every single day. 5. And then there's something almost everyone does without thinking. You close doors. Bedroom, bathroom, maybe a closet. It feels normal, just part of managing your space. But for your cat, that closed door isn't just a barrier. It's a break in their sense of territory. Cats rely on access and awareness to feel secure. When a space suddenly becomes inaccessible, it creates uncertainty. They don't know what's happening behind it, and more importantly, they can't check. That lack of control builds low-level anxiety, especially if it happens repeatedly. Over time, this can shift behavior, more vocalization, restlessness, even changes in eating or sleeping patterns. It's not about wanting to go inside every room, it's about needing the option. When that option disappears, their environment becomes less predictable. And for an animal that depends on stability to feel safe, that small, everyday action can quietly reshape how secure they feel in their own home. 6. You spray a cleaner on the floor, wipe the counter, maybe even freshen up the room with something that smells clean. To you, it's just part of keeping the house safe. But your cat doesn't experience that smell the way you do. Their nose processes chemicals at a completely different intensity, and what feels mild to you can be overwhelming or even irritating to them. Then something subtle happens. They walk across that freshly cleaned surface, sit down, and later start grooming. Whatever was left behind doesn't stay on the floor. It ends up inside their body. Over time, these tiny exposures build up. Not enough to cause a reaction in a day, but enough to quietly affect their respiratory system, their skin, even their internal organs. And because nothing dramatic happens, it never gets connected back to the source. Switching to pet safe, unscented products isn't just a preference, it removes a constant, invisible exposure your cat has no way to avoid. 7. There's a moment when your cat jumps onto your lap, settles in, and then suddenly gets up and leaves after just a few seconds. It feels random, maybe even a little rejecting, but look closer at what happens before that. The room is active. Voices, movement, maybe a screen playing in the background. Cats don't just react to physical touch, they absorb the entire environment. When stimulation builds too quickly, even something positive like petting can become too much. So they leave, not because they want distance from you, but because their sensory threshold has been crossed. When this happens repeatedly, it creates a pattern where your cat limits how long it stays close, even if it wants that connection. Over time, that reduces bonding moments in a way that feels like personality, but is actually environmental pressure. Lowering noise, slowing movements, even just being aware of timing can extend those moments naturally. It's not about forcing closeness, it's about making it sustainable. 8. You might have noticed your cat drinking very little water and assumed it's just how they are. They eat, they seem fine, nothing looks wrong. But behind that, something more serious is quietly developing. Cats have a naturally low thirst drive because they evolved getting moisture from prey. Dry food doesn't trigger that same instinct, so even when water is available, many cats simply don't drink enough to compensate. Over time, this creates a state of mild dehydration that never feels urgent but constantly strains the kidneys. And here's the part most people miss. It doesn't show until much later. Kidney issues in cats often develop silently for years before symptoms appear. By then, it's not about prevention anymore, it's management. Adding moisture through wet food or multiple water sources isn't just an upgrade. It's correcting a mismatch between their biology and their environment. And once you understand that, you start seeing hydration as something active, not automatic. 9. Picture your cat sitting by the window, completely still, staring outside for long stretches. It looks peaceful, like entertainment, but what's happening internally is much more intense. Birds, movement, distant sounds, it triggers their hunting system without giving them any release. Their body prepares for action. Focus sharpens, muscles tense slightly, adrenaline rises. But there's no completion, no chase, no catch. Over time, this creates a kind of loop, stimulation without resolution. Some cats handle it fine, but others begin to carry that tension into the rest of their day. You might see it as sudden bursts of energy, frustration, or even aggression that seems to come out of nowhere. It's not random, it's energy that had nowhere to go earlier. Introducing short, intentional play sessions that mimic hunting, stalk, chase, catch, gives that system a natural outlet. Without it, your cat stays in a state of partial activation longer than it should, and that slowly affects both behavior and stress levels. 10. And then there's something much quieter, something that doesn't look like a problem at all. You're busy on your phone, working, moving through your day. Your cat is nearby, maybe watching, maybe lying down, not asking for anything. It's easy to assume they're independent, that they don't need constant interaction. But cats build their sense of security through small, repeated moments of acknowledgement. When those moments don't happen consistently, something shifts. Not immediately, but gradually. They stop approaching as often. They become more passive, less expressive. It's not that they need attention every second, it's that they need to feel seen when they reach out. Studies on feline behavior show that predictable social interaction lowers stress and increases overall well-being. Without it, even in a physically safe home, a cat can exist in a low-level state of emotional distance. Just a few seconds of intentional attention, repeated daily, reinforces something fundamental, that their presence matters. And that changes everything about how they experience their environment. 11. You might not notice it at first because nothing looks wrong. Your cat still eats, still sleeps, still moves around the house. But something changes in how they exist in your space. They choose corners more often. They hesitate before entering a room. They pause at doorways like they're evaluating something invisible. This is what low-level environmental stress looks like in cats. Not loud, not dramatic, just a constant state of caution. And what makes it dangerous is how easy it is to normalize. Over time, this tension doesn't just stay behavioral, it affects digestion, immune response, even how their body recovers from small issues. A home can be physically safe and still feel psychologically unstable to a cat. And when that happens, their entire system operates slightly off balance every single day. 12. There's a specific look cats give when they're trying to understand something they can't control. You've probably seen it. Still body, focused eyes, ears slightly turning. It happens during sudden noises, unpredictable movements, or when routines shift without warning. What seems minor to you can feel like instability to them. Cats rely heavily on predictability to regulate their internal state. When that predictability breaks too often, their stress doesn't spike and disappear. It lingers. And here's where it becomes more serious. Chronic uncertainty has been linked to long-term health issues in cats, especially related to the urinary system and appetite regulation. It's not just about comfort, it's about whether their body ever fully relaxes. Stability, consistency, even small daily patterns, these aren't preferences. They're the foundation of how your cat stays physically and emotionally balanced. 13. Think about the times your cat tried to interact with you and you didn't respond. Not because you didn't care, but because you were busy, distracted, or simply didn't notice. A slow blink you missed. A quiet approach you overlooked. Cats don't demand attention the way other animals do. They offer it in subtle ways, and when those moments go unanswered repeatedly, something shifts internally. They begin to adjust their expectations. They stop initiating as often. Over time, that reduces not just interaction, but emotional engagement. What's easy to miss is how this affects their overall well-being. Social connection, even in small doses, plays a role in reducing stress hormones and maintaining behavioral stability. When that connection weakens, your cat doesn't act out. They withdraw slightly. And that quiet withdrawal can be one of the most overlooked changes in a cat's life. 14. There's a deeper layer to all of this that most people never consider. Your cat doesn't measure safety the way you do. It's not about locked doors or clean spaces. It's about control, predictability, and the ability to respond to their environment. When those elements are missing, even in subtle ways, your cat adapts, but not without cost. They become more cautious, more reserved, sometimes less expressive. And because this change happens gradually, it blends into what you think is just their personality. But often it's not who they are, it's who they've had to become to feel safe. That realization changes everything because it means some of the behaviors you've accepted as normal might actually be responses to a home that doesn't fully align with their instincts. Now I'm curious, How many of these have you noticed in your own home without realizing what they meant? And which one made you stop and think, wait, my cat does that? Tell me in the comments and include your cat's name. I want to see how many of these hidden patterns are actually happening right now.